worked 80 hours a week for my family shop for free, then found my brother got everything. I'm Owen, 32, and for 10 years I worked at my parents' metal shop in Green Bay like it was my whole life. I was there before sunrise, and I was still there long after everyone else left. I didn't get a paycheck. My parents said room and board was enough for now, and that I was building equity for later. My younger brother Mason had it easy. He'd show up late, act busy, then leave early, and he still got a real salary and a new truck. When clients came in, Mason would sit at the table and nod, while I did the drawings, the measuring, the pricing, and the fixes. If we delivered a great build, Mason would post a photo with it like it was his project. I kept telling myself it was fine, because it was family, and one day I'd have a real piece of it too. Then one night last month, I was alone in the office, finishing paperwork for a big contract. I reached behind some binders and felt an envelope stamped confidential. Inside was a succession plan dated 4 months earlier. It said Mason would get 100% ownership of the shop. My name showed up one time on the employee list. Employee. I read it again, slower, hoping I'd missed my name under owners. I didn't. I flipped through every page anyway. Mason was listed as the future president, and my dad had signed it like it was already decided. 10 years of 80-hour weeks, and this was what I was to them. Around 3 a.m., I stopped pacing, sat down, and made my choice. The next morning, I wrote a resignation letter, left it on Dad's desk, packed my personal tools, grabbed my grandfather's old welding helmet, and walked out. I didn't argue, because if I stayed, I knew I'd get talked into just a little longer. A little over a week later, my phone rang. Dad. His voice was tight. Owen, we need you back. Precision Dynamics is about to leave. Precision Dynamics was our biggest client, and I was the one who built that relationship. Dad rushed on. Quality's slipping. We're behind. Mason can't keep up. I let him finish. Then I said, calm on purpose. Let the air handle it. There was a hard silence. I added, Mason's the owner. He'll figure it out. Then I hung up. After that, it was non-stop calls and texts. Mom saying I was being dramatic. Dad saying I was hurting the family. Mason texting, what's your problem? And you'll regret this. I blocked them because it was the only way to stop the pull. That night, a foreman I trusted texted from a new number. It's a mess. Mason scrapped a big part and everyone's panicking. My stomach dropped, but it also proved what I already knew. 2 days later, I ran into my parents at a diner. They walked right to my booth. Dad said, we need to talk. And Mom said, the business needs you. I said, that plan didn't need me. It gave everything to Mason. Mom snapped, you weren't supposed to see that yet. I said, so when? After another 10 years? Dad leaned in. You lived rent-free. We fed you. I stared at him. I worked 80 hours a week and brought in the biggest clients. I said, Dad tried the last card. Do you want to ruin your grandfather's legacy? That hit because Grandpa was the reason I cared at all. But I thought about Mason taking credit while I missed my own life. I set my mug down and said, no, you're the ones ruining it. I stood up and left. That night, I drove to my parents' house and went into the garage where Grandpa kept his stuff. I found his old journal, and tucked inside was a handwritten agreement from years ago with Grandpa's signature and my dad's. The wording was simple. The business belongs to the people who build it, and nobody gets to claim someone else's work. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I pulled client emails praising my work and asking for me by name. I grabbed records showing the accounts I landed. I got coworkers to write what happened after I left. Missed deadlines, scrap piling up, and Mason snapping because he didn't know how to fix problems. I also found charges on the company card for Mason's personal stuff. When we filed, my parents acted like I'd betrayed them, but in court, the facts didn't bend. My dad said I was just helping out. The judge asked if I ever received wages. They couldn't answer cleanly. Mason tried to sound like an owner, but he couldn't explain basic shop work without dodging. The judge reviewed the documents, then said the succession plan couldn't stand based on the evidence. The order was clear. The business had to be sold, and I was owed my share. I walked out with a check that finally felt real. I rented a small unit, moved in my equipment, and put a simple sign on the door. Palmer Precision. 2 days after I opened, Precision Dynamics called me directly and said, we need parts by Friday. Can you do it? I looked around my empty shop, took one steady breath.